Said hi. Hi, my friend. What's up, bro? What's up? I've been watching you. Yeah, bro, I'm English, bro. Yeah, I speak English, bro. What about you, bro? I'm French. Oh, nice, bro. I heard there was a protest out there. They were burning that. What was that? Paris. Oh, yeah, Eiffel Tower. Yeah, I saw Eiffel Tower burning, bro. So what's the matter there, bro? I've been watching. Oh, what the hell? A player on forums. This is Mr. Savage store. 3,500 paper.
सम्पूर्ण वार्ता टोलीका साथीहरुलाई नमस्कार। यहाँनेरि आज हामी थोरै मात्र उपस्थित भएका छौं, तर वार्ता टोलीका साथीहरुको सबैको समर्थन छ र आज हामीले धेरै कुरा बोल्दैनौं, तर अब यो विषम परिस्थितिलाई निर्कुल गर्नका निम्ति यो निर्कुल जसरी पनि गर्नुपर्छ र यो वार्ता टोली जसरी पनि गठन गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने आवश्यकता बुझिसकेपछि हामीले अहिले हिजो 12 सदस्य वार्ता टोली फिक्स भइसकेको छ। साथै
the pressure is doubled, 1, and 2, you are giving other people attention that literally have no chat, listen. In FNCS Grand Finals, it literally happened in the season. Me and Clicks were first and second. The team in dead last was like split landing on us, griefing us, taking our loot and running. Like, that's just how it was, bro. Like, people that can't earn in the Grand Finals because like they changed it, they want the attention from the streamers. So why would I stream and give people attention? You know what I'm saying? I'll just let Clicks get the attention. Clicks can give them the attention from streaming at Grands, bro. That's why he gets griefed every time, bro. Like, bro, the people in Dead Last want to grief him for attention, bro. That's how it is. Same shit with the fucking vending machine, bro. You guys think they wouldn't have done that if he wasn't streaming? Obviously not.
He's 1v2.
Second commander, Savanna, Gatole, Rashtra Danda Salamira, PNC Danda.
Boys, I don't really know how to do this, so I'm gonna be honest.
Like, the one thing about me and streaming is that, like, when I can't when I'm not good at the actual game, I don't want to stream because I feel like I have to get better. But since I'm the best at the game right now, and there's tourneys every single day, and there's no like breaks for me to get washed, like I have no excuse to not stream. Stream for 2 weeks in a row.
Почему-то не испугаются. Сейчас скажешь, что он топает, как бегемота, не испугаются.
Added the cake to our POI.
அவங்க வந்து ரவுடி பசங்களை உள்ள விட்டுட்டாங்க. உள்ள விட்டுட்டு ஸ்ப்ரே அடிச்சிருக்காங்க.
Second piece is from Three Sisters by Anton Chekhov, the role of Irina. When I woke up today, I got up and washed, and suddenly it dawned on me that I understand everything.
We're always looking, want to see what I'm writing here. You know what I'm writing here? I'm writing.
Talent so that the
Hi, my name is Christina Felicini. Not sure why I just told you that, and
communicate in English easily.
Hi, I'm Vanessa from SpeakEnglishWithVanessa.com, and today I have a special.
Which is, if you've ever been to Kansas, it's just cornfields and that's it. It's not a very beautiful place. But somehow they ended up in Kansas, and my grandma would always give lots of details about growing up there on the farm and how they didn't have electricity. And she would go on about these stories about, this is how she would talk. One time, me and my brother Bern, we went to the backyard and filled up the tin bucket with hot boiling water. And he took all the hot water, Daniel.
She remembered it was a tin bucket.
Yeah. And it was Cousin Bern, and it was, Uncle Freddie, people like that. I think her father's name was Freddie.
Oh, that's
Frederick.
our son's name.
So yeah, I don't know how interesting that is, but it's the only cultural knowledge I have about my past. The other side of the family, they just, we lived in Virginia a long time ago.
Yeah.
And my great-grandfather was a coal miner, apparently. So kind of interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, though, that because in the U.S. everyone everyone has heritage from other places around the world, and it kind of gets lost sometimes. In fact, that's what I was going to talk about too in a moment. But that area in Kansas, I remember your grandma saying that there were German-only churches.
Oh, yeah.
So they would speak only German. And did your grandma know any German?
Very little. I don't think she knew a lot.
I think that's kind of the generational thing. Like,
she's
her parents knew it.
the last generation that spoke German.
Yeah.
Or her parents were the last generation that spoke German.
Yeah, but then for her, she just like understood probably some German, and then, but that community was for some reason where lots of German people moved to, and that's where your family's from.
Yeah, and they went through a lot of really challenging cultural changes. Like there was a lot of German mistrust and hate during that time, obviously for reasons that we can understand. Like we
Political
were
reasons.
at war with Germany a lot, so I think they were trying to scrub out a lot of the super German sounding things. Like apparently our last name was more German sounding at one point. I don't know how they said it, but you know, and speaking German would certainly be one of those things.
Yeah, so they tried to kind of assimilate to life, and that's similar to
Tell me about your family history.
Similar to the interesting point I wanted to tell you about my family history is that on my dad's side, my great-grandma and my great-grandpa, they are from around the area of Naples, Italy. And first, my great-grandpa went on a boat, came to the US, married someone, had 3 kids.
That's a good story.
And then his wife died. So he
that's
has
the bad part.
3 kids and no wife, and he's working, I'm sure, a really difficult job. That was not a time when you could be a single father.
This was in Pittsburgh, right?
They were either in New York or Pittsburgh, but by the time my great-grandma came, they went to Pittsburgh. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves. So he wrote a letter to his mother, who lived back in Italy, and he said, I need to find a new wife. Can you help me to find a new wife from our hometown that will come here to live with me and help take care of my 3 kids? So his mom said, no problem, I'll find you a wife. I got her. Here's her height. Here's her dimensions. Get a wedding dress for her. So my great-grandpa got a wedding dress made in the US, the right size and everything, for his future mysterious wife. We call this a mail order bride. He basically ordered her in a letter, like you would a package. And he, I don't know what he did with his kids, but he went to Italy. And as legend has it, one day he was in the house. They were preparing things for the wedding, and he looked out the window and a woman walked by, and he said, oh, that's the woman I want to marry.
Who's that?
Was that his mail order bride? Nope. That was my great-grandmother. So
was it her sister? The original woman's sister?
One of the legends is that it was woman's sister.
Adds to the drama.
But my grandma clarified this was her mother. She said, "Oh, he saw her outside the window
She was
and
just
said,
a random lady."
And well, this is all a little vague because this is going back quite some time.
Excuse me, ma'am. Will you marry me?
Basically, and she was taller than his other supposed to be wife. So he married her. Her name was Antoinette. He married her. She said, yes, I'm going to move to the US with you, leave my family. She must have had a really tough situation, I imagine. They were all farmers. I'm sure that was a really hard life, and that could give her some hope for the future. So in the wedding pictures, her dress is a little bit too short because it was not supposed to be her dress. It was supposed to be the other lady's dress. And I'm glad that happened, because otherwise I would not be here.
That's Vanessa's origin story, really.
Yeah. And this lady, Antoinette, she moved to the US. She had 3 kids, and then her husband died. So she had 6 children in a new country. Crazy story. She raised them, and she's kind of what we might call the matriarch of my dad's side of the family.
Antoinette Monolfi.
Yes. Everybody who is from that side of the family knows her and reveres her. That, oh, she was so amazing. Oh yeah, she just helped us survive. So we might say she was she was a survivor. She really went through a lot, and she was the right person for the job because she made it work.
Nice.
So yeah, that's an interesting story about my family. I'm sure everyone has those as well. So I want to ask you the same question. Let us know in the comments, what's an interesting story or an interesting fact about your family history? We'd love to know. Let's go to question number 2. This is about childhood. And I'd like to know, what's something that you did as a child that you still do now? These are kind of personal questions to start off with.
Well, we laughed before this because she said everything. So I am a little bit, let's just say, youthful in my approach to life. So that's the positive way to say it anyway. But something that I directly do, especially now, because I have kids, is catching critters.
Oh, yeah.
Catching critters and keeping them. And I would say critters are generally small animals.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I spent, I would say 50% of my life trying to catch frogs, lizards, grasshoppers, snakes, bugs of any kind. And I would keep them in cages, and I would use nets to catch butterflies, terrariums, aquariums, fish, anything like that.
Wow.
I caught and kept lots and lots of critters. So there was probably a 5-year phase where we didn't do that very much. But funnily enough, even when we first got married, and you're into this too. I don't know where she got this. Maybe it's infectious.
We caught tadpoles as kids.
So we would catch tadpoles as just a married couple. We'd go down to the pond and scoop in and get some mucky gucky tadpoles and watch them change into frogs. It's the miracle of life.
You know what? I have a distinct memory on our honeymoon.
Oh!
We were taking a hike, and you saw this. I think this was the first time I'd ever caught critters with you.
Oh.
Because, I don't know, maybe when we were
She didn't know what she was signing up for.
Maybe when we were dating, we just weren't in those situations. But I remember we were on a hike, and you were like in a stream picking up rocks, and you were so excited. This is a good salamander spot. There might be salamanders. And then you found one, and I was so impressed. Like,
yeah, thank you.
How did you find that salamander? Because I caught tadpoles maybe like every summer as a kid. But I never caught salamanders or whole frogs or fish. We like had nets and caught like fireflies and stuff. But I think you take it to the next level.
Yeah. Especially as a kid, I took it to the next level. Like one time I caught a 5-foot snake, and I didn't even know what kind it was. I just reached into the bushes. I didn't grab it the right way. It was like swinging it through the air. And that was probably the dumbest thing I ever did, honestly, as, you know, catching critters as a child. But it extends beyond that, too. I've always liked keeping fish. I love making fish tanks in the environments. And obviously, you can do that for frogs and reptiles. So I have big dreams for my son because he's also very into this.
Oh, yeah. He is crazed about his net and catching stuff. He just loves that.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
it's treasures in nature.
Soon enough, our house will turn into a menagerie of critters.
I just have one rule.
Scorpions!
I don't mind keeping frogs and lizards and fish.
Snakes?
But I don't want to keep any snakes.
Oh, come on.
I know a lot of snakes are harmless, but
they're cute.
I would rather the snakes live under our shed than live in our house.
That's more dangerous.
Well, if they're not poisonous.
Oh, okay.
If they're not venomous, then they can, you know, catch rats and catch things and keep our chickens safe, that type of thing. But
is that what snakes do?
Yeah, a lot of chickens.
They protect chickens?
A lot of people, and this is getting a little too deep.
Are chickens critters?
I don't think so. I kind of, when I think of a critter, I think of like crawling, like something that goes like, like a little crawling thing.
Am I a critter?
That's a good question. But I was going to say, some people, we have chickens. If you might have seen this on our YouTube channel before. Some people purposefully have a rat snake or a black snake, a garter snake, that live in their chicken coop, and they eat like one egg per 2 weeks or something. They don't eat that much.
Is that good?
But they do it for protection. So they're kind of they're keeping rats away, they're keeping other things away from the coop.
Wow,
and there's a whole, let me tell you.
So you want me to bring snakes into our family?
Well,
but outside.
As long as they are outside, that's okay. I don't want snakes in my house. Yeah, so that's.
I have lots of good stories about snakes in the house. Like one snake escaped the house.
Don't tell me that.
And my mom found it like under the couch like months later, and it was like dead.
Oh
completely.
no. Yeah.
And it was one of those classic situations of mom screams in the other room, and we're like, what?
You kids have that
like,
snake in here?
Daniel, gee, what is this thing? That's what she'd say.
Well, do you want to share also, while we're on this topic, your first memory, the frog?
Oh. Oh, my very first memory.
Yes, this
Yeah.
will drill in the point that Dan
I
really
like
likes
critters.
to catch critters.
Yeah, I caught a toad probably when I was 2 years old, and I was, for some reason, holding it off my deck, and I dropped it down into the bushes. And I remember thinking, no, my toad! And then I went down to look for it, and I couldn't find it.
And this is Dan's first memory in life.
Literally. One, at least as far as I know.
Well, there you go.
That's the point of
A
memories.
lifetime
As far
of
as I
catching
know.
critters started at a young age. Well, I think.
Yeah, how about you?
For me,
What do you still do besides catching lots of critters?
I do catch tadpoles still. That's fun. But I think the thing that first came to my mind, and I tried to think about just like the first thing that came to my mind for each of these, is when I was a kid, I loved to dig in the dirt. My sister and I had two best friends who lived right across the street, and we spent hours in the backyard just digging in the dirt. We built things in the dirt. We had little inventions. We made homes in the dirt. We did so many things. And now I dig in the dirt, but I call it garden.
What you say is who you are. The power to communicate, the vast majority of the time, they're going to only.
When you leave this room, when you go out into the world, today, tomorrow, whenever you feel like it, I'd like you to ask and answer one question of someone who's a stranger. You might meet them on the bus, you might meet them walking down the street, and I'm going to show you the question that I'm going to ask you to ask and answer. The question is, when was the last time you cried in front of someone? Now, just out of curiosity, how many of you are really excited about this experiment? No hands went up whatsoever. And that makes sense, right? Because like there can be nothing that seems more intimidating or less fun than finding a stranger. stranger, asking them when they've cried in front of someone else, and then telling them about the time you cried in front of someone else. But I'm going to try and convince you over the next few minutes that this experiment is not only worth doing, it's worth doing whenever you can, because it will make your life better. And to explain how I got to this, I have to tell you a little bit of a story about me and my wife. A few years ago, we got into this bad pattern. We've been married for 20 years, but I would come home from a long day at the office. I was a reporter at the New York Times at that point, and I would start complaining about my day, about how I'm not appreciated enough. And my wife, very reasonably, would offer me some great advice. She would say something like, why don't you take your boss out to lunch and you guys can get to know each other a little bit better. And instead of being able to hear her, I would get even more upset. And I would say things like, why aren't you supporting me? You should be outraged on my behalf. And she would get upset because I was attacking her for giving me good advice. This was not, anyone ever have an experience like this? It was not in a good situation. And so I went and I started talking to researchers who were studying communication. I asked them, why am I getting into this pattern? And they said, well, you're making a mistake. We're living through this golden age of understanding communication, really for the first time, because of advances in neural imaging and data collection. And they said one of the big things that we've learned is that we tend to think of a discussion as being just one conversation, right? We're talking about one thing, my day, or the kids' grades, what to have for dinner. But what they said is that actually each discussion contains many different conversations. And in general, these conversations tend to fall into one of three buckets. There's these practical conversations where we're talking about what's this all about? What are we really discussing? But then there's emotional conversations where we're talking about how do we feel? And my goal is to share with you my feelings, and I don't want you to solve them. I want you to empathize. And then there's conversations that are social conversations about who we are, the social identities that are important to us, how we relate to each other and how we relate to society. And what the researchers said is what we've learned is that if people are having different conversations at the same moment, they can't really hear each other. They can't really connect. Conversations at the same moment, they can't really hear each other. They can't really connect. And in fact, this is exactly what was happening with me and my wife, right? I was coming home and having an emotional conversation. My wife was responding with a practical conversation. They are both legitimate conversations, but because we weren't having the same conversation at the same moment, we weren't really communicating with each other. And within neurology and psychology, this insight is known as the matching principle, which says that successful communication requires recognizing what kind of conversation is occurring and then matching each other. But how do we do that? Well, in schools, they've actually taught teachers to do this. If you are a school teacher, and you'll probably learn at some point that if a student comes up to you with a problem or they want something they want to talk about, you should ask them, do you want to be helped, which is a practical conversation? Do you want to be hugged, which is an emotional conversation? Or do you want to be heard, which is a social conversation? And it seems to work. It seems like if you ask students what they need, they'll tell you. But of course, that is hard to do in real life, right? If you go up and you ask someone at work if they want a hug, the HR might get involved, so you might not want to do that. But luckily, there is another way of doing this for all of us normal people, which is to ask questions, and in particular, to ask a certain type of question, a special question, what's known as a deep question. A deep question is something that invites us to talk about our values or our beliefs or our experiences. And that can sound a little intimidating, but it's actually much easier than it sounds. For instance, instead of asking someone, where do you work? You could ask them, what do you love about your job? Instead of asking someone, where'd you go to high school? You could say, what was high school like? Wait, what did you learn there? What changed you there? Put differently, instead of asking about the facts of someone's life, we should ask them how they feel about their life. Because when we do, they tend to reveal to us who they really are. They tend to tell us what they want not only out of this conversation, but how they hope that we'll see them and how they want to see us, what matters to them most. In fact, what studies show us is that this is so powerful because these kinds of questions allow us to be vulnerable. and vulnerability and reciprocal vulnerability. When we hear vulnerability and we become vulnerable in return, is the key to allowing us to connect with other people. And to explain how this works, I want to tell you a story about this guy, Dr. Bafar Adai. Dr. Adai is a cancer surgeon in New York City. He specializes in prostate cancer, removing cancer tumors from prostates. And he has this kind of interesting job because every single day a patient will come into his office asking, he thinks, for medical advice. And what he will tell them is, you should not get surgery. The prostate is located so close to the nerves that control urination and sexual function that it's a relatively risky surgery. And what's more, most prostate tumors, they grow very, very slowly. It's actually one of the slowest growing forms of cancer in existence. There's a saying among doctors that if you have an old patient with prostate cancer, he's gonna die of old age before the cancer kills him. And so Dr. Adai would have these patients come in and he would tell them, look, I don't think you should do anything. In fact, I think you should do this thing called active surveillance. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a blood sample every 6 months. We're gonna do a biopsy every 2 years. And if the tumor seems to change, we'll do an MRI. And if we have to, we can do the surgery. But otherwise, no radiation, no surgery. It's gonna be okay. And these patients would listen to him, and then they would go home and they would discuss it with their spouse. And then they would walk in the next day and they would insist on having the surgery. They would say, I absolutely want you to cut me open, take the tumor out as fast as possible. And for Dr. Adai, this was bewildering, right? He thought these would be the easiest conversations of his life. He's telling people that they don't have to have surgery, and he's a surgeon. He told me that when this happens again and again and again, you start to realize this isn't a problem with my patients. This is a problem with me. I'm doing something wrong. And so he goes to these folks, these professors at the Harvard Business School, and he asks them for advice on what to do differently. And they said, well, look, the biggest mistake that you're making is you are starting this conversation all wrong. You are starting by assuming that the patient walks into your room, into your exam room, looking for advice and looking for medical solutions. But you don't know if that's true. You're not asking them any questions. What you need to do is you need to start asking deep questions. So 2 weeks later, after having this conversation, a 62-year-old man comes into Dr. Adai's office for the first time. He had just gotten his diagnosis of having prostate cancer. And Dr. Adai, instead of giving him advice, instead of telling him what he ought to do, he asks the question. He asks the question, what does this cancer diagnosis mean to you? And the man starts talking, and he starts talking about how his father had died when he was 17 years old. And this had just been so hard for him, and it had been so hard for his mom. And then he starts talking about his grandchildren and his fears for the world they're inheriting, what with climate change and everything else that's going on. Dr. Adai had expected this guy to at least bring up cancer, to at least mention mortality or pain, but it never came up. And at that moment, Dr. Adai realized, because he had asked this deep question, that this man wanted to have an emotional conversation. He wanted to talk about, how do we feel? He needed to be hugged. And so Dr. Adai didn't actually hug him, right? But he did the verbal equivalent. And then Dr. Adai says, look, do you mind?
Hello, everyone. Today, I have an amazing
Prime Minister is in the United States today for talks with the American President at the White House. The talks are very important for British and American
Look at the time. Julia! It's 7:30. Your train's at 7:45. Coming!
Is this okay?
Lovely, dear. Well, good luck.
Thanks, Mom. Bye, Dad.
Bye, love.
Colin, it's her first day today.
What? Oh, yes.
Thanks, Dad. Bye.
This is my personal assistant, Rebecca Bond.
How do you do, Rebecca? Pleased to meet you.
Come and meet some of the people in the newsroom. Is Frederick in? He's the managing director.
No, he's in London.
Oh, I see.
Every break you take, every I've been watching. Whoa! Hả? किन आँखी आँखी हुने सन्जु त अहिले कि भन्नु त्यही भने जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई त पक्कै भन्नु जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई त न त मैले कसरी सुने त Tell me what I gotta do for love. What is happening, man? What is happening? What is going
Certain
on?
type of question,
What is happening? I don't understand what is going on. Game is bugging very much. What is happening, man? What is happening? What is going
Certain
on?
type of question,
What is happening? I don't understand what is going on. Tell me what I got to for. Game is bugging very much. आठ 15 23 20 स्टॉक में देखेंगे वो रेस living room को चिंता कर रहा है रियान को मैले किन्दा के किन्नु I'm losing you. Da, 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 da. I'm losing you. Please say mercy on my. Oh my, please have mercy on my. Oh baby, please have mercy on me. Take it easy on my. Oh baby, please have mercy on me. Take it easy on my. I can't play this fucking. No way. Nothing. I can't play anything. Solo नहीं खेला है, duo नहीं खेला है. Everything is fucking locked, bro. Let's go, chat. Let's go. We're playing fucking this. We're playing fucking tournament, bro. Let's fucking go, chat. Have mercy on me. very and I'm just gonna find it. Maybe no. Alright. I need some mobility. Yo, Joe, what's up? I just have to farm some max. Some Let's make him get away. Where's the animal, bro? Oh, there's another. He just killed me. What's that? I think they're scaling up or what? They're taking this fight way too long. They might be in the same boat. Oh, look at them. I saw one over there. How did I not get out of there, bro? I was just trying to take that stallion, right? Fucking hell, bro. That was fun. तल रहेछ म माथि हानेर अड्किदिएर क्या म उता Please have mercy on my heart. Oh baby, I don't wanna know. Baby, you should know that my mama don't like me. Never let you, neither I was wrong. I've been so caught up in my they don't think what's going on. I'm only fool. Ini tak usah ya. Tiga kesan. I forgot, bro. Where's the break? What's that? What was that, bro? Fucking serious. What a kinda kill with the card in it. But I played so bad there. Mid game to one. I don't let the leg short him up the brother amazing. Humble killer.
Wait, what?
Good. That was perfect, bro.
Where did these guys just come from?
Box. 60. 7. Josh Braley.
He was like, man, seriously.
Give me a second. Hold on. Okay, I think that's good. I think that's good. Okay, we looking kind of good. No. Okay. Anyway. All right. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you.
Oh my god.
Give me 1 second.
What is this guy doing?
And then let me. Named Clicks basically, and he basically like tells me to do these things. Like he makes me like do this, and he tells me like I should do.
Left his date speechless when he welled up and for her when Click said it's bad. Good. What? How are they killing? How are they killing me down? What the fuck? Fucking hell, bro. All of the Division 4 by playing duo trial of Dragon through Division 4. China again. Twenty 45 from the video. I have no friends playing it. Oh, I almost broke my phone though. Oh my goodness. I almost broke my phone. Like fucking hell. Where am I? Why am I not there? Gold track platinum. The 20 points side. I might be somewhere around top 100, 200. Where am I? Top 30. The fuck? $600. 0 points. You fucking yeah. 46 point. Top 59 knowledge. Top 60. Like me on top 60, so 59 points. Not bad. Top 100 manage, top 100. Top 59 was the fastest quality. Wow, let's go. 14th place for 1 elim, 17th place for 1 elim, 37th place, 73rd place. Maximum 2 area तिर जानु भयो लास्ट लेभल बारे टिकट साइड है कुन एरिया गयो नि कुन एरिया कपा ट्र्याक दियो हैन और रेजिस्टेन्स ब्रेक दियो होला त्यसले लाइन आउट लाने Outlaw, Septicide. Tiny Septicide. Okay. Tiny Septicide anyway. And then Outlaw is his name. Uno.
What has happened?
Making up.
He's here, like a game here.
Này để có YouTube rồi.
Did you damage all of them?
ಮೊದಲು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದು cool. Prepared. Please have mercy. The whole team of getting moved way out. Go. my goodness, man, bro. Fuck. I just wanna fight the fucking offspring now. Huh? Fucking bad jokes. Fuck, man. That's what I did. Dumb. Put it again, next time again. We're going after him, put it up again. I don't give a fuck, man. I'm gonna go here, bro. Oh, baby. I don't care, bro. I'll do the real listen now.
कितनी हंसी के इनका आशिक तुझको ही चुपके से बोलो न क्या करे दिल जो तुम्हारा है
I don't want to play this. Qualifying round religion. Not very much. Peter was 310, Pixie 272, Margaret 262, Benya 255, Easy, Queasy, understand. It's too cold.
Seriously?
Oh my god!
170 on this guy. Seriously?
cosa è giocata? No. Che campana liberazione scappata. I think it's gonna be my favorite, yeah. Please have mercy on me. There's something wrong there. I've been losing you. It's Bro, the snake guy is creative. Johnny. Gloria, Gloria, Gloria.
Dosere